Part 1. The Edge of the Wind. The first time Claire heard the screaming, she thought it was the wind. Everyone in Graymarsh said the cliffs howled at night, a trick of the sea air and hollow rock. But the sound that came through her window wasn't just the wind. It was human. A long, broken wail that carried through the fog, ending in a sharp, desperate gasp. Claire froze beside her bed, listening. Her new home stood just a few hundred feet from the cliff's edge, a small, weather-beaten cottage she'd inherited from her late aunt. They'd said her aunt had fallen, but after 3 nights here, Claire wasn't so sure. That morning she asked the old man at the general store, "Does anyone live near the cliffs?" she said. He stopped stacking cans and looked at her. Too long. "No one stays long enough to," he replied. "The wind gets in your head." When she pressed him, he only said, "If you hear your name on the wind, don't answer." That night, Claire sat by her window, notebook in hand, trying to prove to herself that it was all superstition. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the screaming began again. Softer this time, like someone calling for help from far below. Then a voice whispered her name. "Claire." The notebook fell from her hand. She ran outside, barefoot, the cold biting her skin as she neared the cliff. The fog swirled, heavy and alive, and for a moment she saw someone standing near the edge, a woman in a white coat, her hair whipping in the wind. Her aunt. Claire blinked, and the figure was gone. But the wind still screamed. Only now, she realized it wasn't just echoing. It was coming from below. The next morning, Claire tried to convince herself it was all a dream. The fog, the voice, the figure. Her mind must have been playing tricks on her. But when she looked down at her notebook, she froze. On the open page, written in shaky, wet ink, were 3 words she didn't remember writing. "Don't look down." Her hands trembled. The ink was still damp. She hadn't touched that pen since last night. By noon, she'd walked into town again, desperate for distraction. The locals avoided her eyes when she passed. Even the cashier at the coffee shop fell silent when she mentioned where she lived. Finally, a young woman approached her outside. Red hair, pale face, cigarette trembling between her fingers. "You're staying by the cliffs?" she asked quietly. Claire nodded. The woman glanced around before leaning closer. "My brother used to live there. Said he heard someone crying from the sea every night." "What happened to him?" The woman exhaled smoke, eyes wet. "He went out to help." Pause. "He never came back." That night, Claire didn't sleep. The house creaked and groaned like something alive. The sound of the ocean below seemed louder, almost angry. Around 2 a.m., the wind picked up. She covered her ears, but the sound grew sharper, like words carried through the storm. "Claire, help me!" Her breath caught in her throat. She turned toward the window, and there, through the curtain of fog, she saw movement. A hand, pale, trembling, reaching up from below the cliff's edge. For a moment, she couldn't move. Then she stumbled outside, flashlight shaking in her grip, the sea air biting her face. "Who's there?" she shouted. No answer. Only the sound of the surf crashing far below. She leaned closer, flashlight beam cutting through the mist, and saw something wedged between the jagged rocks. A red scarf. Her aunt's scarf. Then, a whisper, closer than ever, almost inside her ear. "Come closer, Claire." The beam flickered, and for just one heartbeat, she saw a reflection in the light. Her own face, but twisted, smiling. Then the wind screamed again.
By morning, the fog was thicker than ever, a heavy gray curtain that swallowed the sea and the sky into one colorless blur. Claire hadn't slept. She sat by the kitchen table, her aunt's red scarf laid out in front of her. It smelled faintly of salt and smoke. The police had come and gone hours ago. They told her the same thing they always told everyone who lived near the cliffs. The tides take what they want. But Claire knew what she'd heard. The voice, the whisper calling her name. It wasn't the ocean. She opened her aunt's old journal again. Most pages were empty, but on one, written in smeared pencil, were 3 words repeated over and over. "She's still calling." Her chest tightened. That evening, as the fog began to glow orange with sunset, Claire stood by the window and froze. Something was written on the glass. Condensation had formed in long, shaky letters, as if traced by a finger from the outside. Help her. Her heart pounded. She ran to the porch, but the fog swallowed everything. The cliffs were invisible now, just the faint sound of waves far below. Then came the smell. Wet stone, seaweed, and something faintly metallic. Claire backed inside, slammed the door, locked it, but when she turned around, she saw footprints, small, wet, leading across the floor to the living room mirror. Her reflection stared back at her. But behind her, just over her shoulder, was another shape. Faint, blurry, moving slightly. "Who are you?" she whispered. The reflection flickered, and the answer came not from her lips, but from deep inside the walls, soft and broken. "You heard me once before." She stepped closer to the mirror. The surface rippled slightly, like water. And there, for just a second, she saw her aunt's face, eyes wide, mouth open, as if screaming underwater. Then, across the fogged glass, new words appeared, slow and deliberate. "You shouldn't have come back." The lamp beside her flickered. The air grew colder. And outside, through the howling wind, came that voice again. Only this time, it wasn't calling her name.
By dawn, the fog had not lifted. It felt alive now, shifting, breathing, curling against the windows as if listening. Claire hadn't slept again. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her aunt's face in that mirror, mouth open in a silent scream. She told herself it was exhaustion, grief, imagination. But then came the letters. This morning, they weren't on the window. They were carved into the wooden table. Find her. Claire's hands shook as she touched the grooves. They were still fresh. Tiny splinters flaked off under her fingertips. She grabbed her coat and flashlight. There was only one place she could go, the cliffs. The air outside was sharp, the fog clinging to her like damp cloth. Every step toward the edge echoed louder than the last, swallowed and thrown back by the endless gray. Somewhere below, waves crashed like slow thunder. Halfway down the trail, she found it. A trail of footprints in the wet soil, leading to the old warning sign. Danger, unstable edge. One more set of prints stopped right there. Her aunt's shoes had been found near this spot. She knelt, brushing away the dirt, and noticed something strange. Under the moss at the base of the sign was a piece of paper, half buried, edges curled and damp.
She pulled it free. It was another journal page. Scrawled handwriting covered it in panicked bursts. It's not the sea that takes them. It's what's beneath it. It calls. It remembers. Her heart raced. She looked out over the fog, and for the first time she realized the ocean wasn't moving normally. The mist below the cliff seemed to pulse, like it was breathing in rhythm. Then came the whisper, soft, from behind her. "You found me." Claire spun around. No one. But in the fog, just a few feet back, a shadow formed. A tall figure, hair drifting as if underwater, the faint shape of a hand reaching out. "Who are you?" Claire whispered. The figure tilted its head. The voice came again, not from its mouth, but from the cliffs themselves, deep, resonant, trembling the air. "You left me here." Claire stumbled back, the earth shifting under her feet. The cliff groaned, cracking slightly beneath her weight. She tried to run, but the fog thickened, and suddenly she wasn't on the path anymore. She was standing right at the edge. From below came a sound, not waves, not wind. Screaming, hundreds of voices rising from the mist. Claire froze, her flashlight flickering, and in that pale beam she saw them, faces swirling beneath the fog like something trapped just under the surface, and one of them looked exactly like her.
The screams echoed until Claire couldn't tell if they were coming from the cliffs or from inside her own head. She stumbled backward, clutching her ears, but the voices only grew clearer. "Claire, stay. You heard us once before." Her flashlight flickered again, beam cutting through the mist. For a second, she saw movement in the fog. Shapes crawling upward, reaching for the edge. Hands, faces, eyes that glowed faintly with pale blue light. Then, silence. Everything stopped. The ocean below was still again. Too still. Claire's breath came out in white bursts. She took a step back, her heel hitting rock. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She turned to leave, but the path behind her was gone. Just gray, endless fog, stretching in all directions. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "You're hallucinating. You're—" A whisper cut her off. It came from directly beside her ear, cold and intimate. "Not hallucinating. Remember." She spun, swinging the flashlight wildly, and caught a glimpse of something reflected in the beam. Not a face. A mirror. There, in the middle of the cliffs, stood an old, broken mirror, its frame twisted and half buried in rock, as though the sea itself had spat it out. The same mirror from her aunt's house. Her pulse quickened. She stepped closer. Inside the glass, her reflection wavered. Dark, distorted. But then she saw another figure beside her reflection. A woman. Long hair. Sea-soaked clothes. Skin almost translucent. Her aunt. "Aunt Lydia?" she whispered. The woman in the mirror turned to face her, but her expression wasn't human anymore. Her eyes were hollow, her mouth stretched in a trembling, unnatural smile. "You shouldn't have come back." Claire stumbled backward, shaking her head. "You're dead! You—" "Dead?" The voice echoed from everywhere, from the fog, from the water, from inside her skull. "No. Traded." Claire's throat tightened. Traded for what? Lydia's reflection tilted her head.
to keep the cliffs quiet. The mirror began to hum, a low, vibrating tone that shook the air. Cracks spread across its surface like veins of lightning, and from inside, something started to move. Shapes pressing against the glass, clawing, writhing. "Stop!" Claire screamed. The voice whispered again, calm, close. "You can't stop what you are." The mirror shattered, and the world went black. When Claire opened her eyes, she was standing somewhere else. The cliffs were gone. Only the ocean stretched out before her, endless and silent. And in the water, her reflection stared back, smiling.
Claire's lungs burned as she gasped for air, but no sound came out. The ocean around her was silent, glass-like, and endless. The horizon bled into gray sky, no wind, no waves, just stillness. "Hello?" she whispered, but even her own voice sounded muted, as if swallowed by something vast and unseen. Then, a faint ripple. She turned. Out of the water, figures began to rise. Dozens of them, pale, silent, soaked to the bone, faces twisted in the same frozen scream. Their eyes glowed faintly beneath the surface, watching her with hollow recognition. She stumbled back. No, this isn't real." But then she heard it, her own voice, whispering, echoing across the flat sea. "You never left." She looked down. Her reflection smiled up at her. It wasn't her. Not anymore. The eyes were darker, colder, the face still and patient, waiting. Then the water beneath her began to tremble, and a sound rose from deep below, a low, distant wail that grew and grew until it became an unbroken scream. The cliffs, the voices, they were all one sound. Claire fell to her knees, clutching her head. "Make it stop, please." But the voice, her voice, whispered softly in her ear. "You're the one who screamed first." Flashes of memory tore through her mind, her childhood at the coast, the day she'd watched her aunt vanish into the sea, the echo that had followed her ever since. It hadn't been calling to her. It had been calling from her. A trade, a balance. The cliffs always demanded someone to remember the sound. And now it was her turn. The air grew heavy with salt and mist as the ocean began to pull her down, slow and inevitable. The figures in the water reached for her, their faces soft, almost relieved. When she screamed again, it wasn't in terror. It was the same endless cry that had haunted the cliffs for decades. The sound rose with the wind, carrying across the coast. By morning, the fog lifted. The cliffs were quiet once more. Only a cracked mirror lay among the rocks, its surface rippling faintly with the reflection of the sea. And if you stand there long enough, if you listen just before dawn, you can still hear her whisper, "Don't answer the scream."